Okay, guys, it's a couple minutes after. I appreciate everybody joining us today, and really just welcome everybody. If you can mute your, make sure you mute your computer or phone so we don't have any background noise. If everybody could do that, that'd be awesome. I want to welcome everyone to today's edition of GSM Learn, Grow, and Lead. I hope you've had a good couple weeks and ready to get back to it. I know we were going to do this last week, but we had a couple things happen late that afternoon that I just didn't want to present this. We had a couple things going on, especially we had one of our guys in the hospital with some, an injury on a job site. So I just wanted to postpone a week, but appreciate you guys bearing with us. And as usual, we're going to do what we normally do and uh, review what we got, what we went over the last time we were together. And if you remember, last time we went over, Stephen went over chapters 4 and 5. In the power of a positive team. And so we're continuing today. But to review that, we really focused on positive teams work together with optimism, positivity, and belief, that they encourage each other. They and feed the positive dog. I really love that thought process. And then the whole process of talking to yourself instead of listening to yourself, something we can all do and get used to, forming good habits. And I do this, replace have to with get to. We're so fortunate that the more we say get to and think get to, the better we'll perform across the board. And then the old defeating the old Murphy's law and making sure we defeat Murphy. And then we get to choose whether it's fear or faith. And that I think especially with what we've been through this last year, these last year and a half years, especially at GSM, having the faith that the best is yet to come. And then positive teams transform and remove negativity. No energy vampires allowed to transform or remove them. And not waste a lot of energy on those vampires. And then implement a no complaining rule. We life is hard, but if we can implement that no complaining rule, we start off on the right foot. And then great teams have positive conflict. I know in today's world we kind of want to have this view that we don't have any conflict, but great teams appreciate positive conflicts. And so as long as we can control those conflicts and move together and trust each other and love each other, we'll move in a good direction. So taking that, moving on to chapter 6. Hope everybody did review the homework and everything. But moving on to chapter 6, it really focuses on positive teams communicate and connect. And you know, uh, I thought at the very beginning there's a couple things that jumped out. Everyone wants to be a great team, but to be a great team, you must make the time to build great relationships. And I looked at it as the 4 C's. You need to communicate, connect, commit, and care to create meaningful relationships, strong bonds, and team unity. Um, you can have the greatest vision and purpose, and we talk about that a lot. I mean, all kind of companies and groups want to talk about their vision and their purpose, but if you don't get connected and united in order to make it come to fruition, it really doesn't mean anything. And in today's world, we've got so many. I think especially in this crazy world we have now, are we spending enough quality time building relationships, or are we just really going through the motions? And I think it's hard. I mean, I think we have that problem at home. We have it up here. So if we're connected at the top, if we're not connected at the top, then it crumbles from the bottom. And so, I just think it's a great way. So I like to circle the wagon, the 4 C's. We're going to talk about that in a minute: communicate, connect, commit, and care. And, and then the understanding that connection is that difference between good and great. If you have a strong connection with your team, it allows you to build trust and a bond that allows you to speak openly. And that connection and communication, that connection, it's easy when things are going good, but when you've built trust and a really solid bond, when there's a problem, it really puts you in a position to be able to handle that problem together. Teams aren't built on when everything's going smooth. Teams are built when there's controversy, or maybe there's miscommunication, or there's issues, and so you got to dive deeper into that relationship when there is an issue. And so we hope that that the building teams will do that. I really like the thought process in our world, that they talked about Google, and they talked about the A teams they have at Google's are their top, are made up of their top scientists. But as they moved forward at Google, they found out that what they considered their B teams, which were made up of individuals that they thought weren't the smartest in the company, that's where they got most of the improvement from, and most of the success it wasn't from the teams with the top scientist. It was the group that they thought had the second best scientists, but they worked better together. They communicated better. They had built better connections. And so because of that, the teams performed. And so and we have some of that here. We have some guys that may not be the most skilled, but they work better to develop better teams. And then guess what? They end up with better results. And so when we do that, and I thought a great way to look at it that was in this chapter was it's about me, not we, in those situations where you got these top teams, you got these A teams that aren't performing as well. And a lot of times that's what it ends up being, that they're saying it's about me and not we. And that me infects, it's a disease that infects everyone. You got narcissism, self-focus, people get into individual silos. And it really needs to transition that. And the B teams that they had did a better job of breaking that down and focusing more on a we approach instead of a me approach. And of course, it starts with communication. Open two-way communication. The biggest thing I think it does in this chapter and in our lives is build trust, like we talked about. And then trust generates commitment. You can do just about anything with anybody if you trust them. I've got a lot of relationships, and some of them are new relationships that you realize people, you can trust them. And you start having really more in-depth conversations and communication, and you understand each other. And when you understand each other, little small problems or disagreements go away. And then when a big problem comes, you can handle it. So trust generates commitment. Commitment fosters teamwork, and teamwork delivers results. And, results are the goal. We can talk about all these other things. You can talk about feeling good, we can talk about, but you feel good by getting results. Whatever those results, look like to a team and an individual. It really is not just here, but it's at home too. You guys all have results you want to get in your family. You all have results with your kids, with your spouses, with people around you. Maybe you've got somebody in your family that's elderly, maybe your parents. You got all these goals that you got to accomplish, but open communication, especially in families, helps solve those. And one of the examples I thought was nice was listed. They had Gordon talked to Chad Naus, and I probably messed up his name, but the crew chief for Jimmy Johnson. And, Jimmy Johnson's obviously one of the best race car drivers, most successful with results ever. And their whole focus was during the race, before the race, after the race. Their crew chief said that the biggest reason they're successful is because of the level of communication developed so much trust. And so I think that's where it's really a big thing for us to focus on. So a piece of that was interesting was, if you don't communicate, there's a void, and think about, your lives and how we communicate up here at GSM Services, or maybe when we don't communicate, well, there's a void, there's a hole, there's an opportunity for somebody to fill in that void with something else. They a lot of times will assume the worst. And so the negativity will fill in, those energy vampires, negativity can fill in that void. And, and I hear a lot, and they talked about it, in today's world, we have all these mobile phones and everybody's on their mobile phones. Well, I don't think that's the problem. I just disagree with that. I think it's us, we, mobile phones or email and everything, that's just a device. That's just a tool. It's just like anything else, like a hammer or, it's like our gauges. It's like anything else. It's a tool to make us more successful, but then we have to, make things personal. And so it's really us and how we operate. So we need to fill the void. If there's any void, we need to make sure that we're communicating clearly and not let excuses like the phones get in the way. And then I think that's where we get into operating out of fear instead of trust, because we don't communicate clearly. And so, I think there's ways to handle that. You fill the void by, they use some examples of you fill the void by having consistency. One of the examples I liked is how they had a meeting in a restaurant before every shift, so they all knew exactly what the plan was for that shift. Well, we have those opportunities. We have weekly, shifts. If we start off on Mondays, that the rest of the week's going to be set out this way. But we also, most of our jobs, we have 4-hour shifts. If you think about it, we get to a job site in the morning and we have a 4-hour block or so before we go to lunch. And then we have a block after lunch. And so, we can have huddles that'll, help our guys. And we've done that in the past. And then service calls. If we have a service call, we can have a huddle, with our dispatching, with everything before every service call, and we can make sure that we're on the same page. So there's all kind of ways we can do things we can do. And then I really like the personal example of, the family meetings to make sure that we're really asking good questions. And, as parents, we get to decide what we talk about at dinner. And so I think the dinner meetings up here that we have with each other, maybe even your lunch meetings. I know you guys all drive to the job and you're talking about business all day, right? Sure. But you can decide what you're going to talk about before you get to the job. And I thought that was but the most important, I think the most important is the one-on-one. The group settings are great like this, but as somebody trying to build a team or somebody that wants to be on a good team to be successful, you've got to decide that one-on-one, you're going to develop great relationships, and it's up to everybody on the team, but it's mostly up to the leader. You're never going to have a great team if the leader doesn't pay the price to build a good team. And everybody that's a leader's got to do that. So I hope you're all wanting to build a good team. And and then there was a lot in here about that I really thought was important on why don't we communicate. And boy, the big one that jumped out at me was that everybody on these calls can relate to is busyness and stress are the enemies of communication. And buddy, that's our deal. And I think everybody here that's in any kind of leadership, we're too busy, we're stressed. But that actually, when we don't communicate, leads to more busyness and more stress because we make too many mistakes. And there's a couple examples. I did like the whole reptile brain killing the part of the positive dog brain. I thought that was a great way to look at it because we all love dogs, and even you cat people know that dogs are better than cats. But we, the positive dog, that no matter what you do, that tail's going to keep wagging. We need to focus on the dog more than the reptile. And so I thought it was interesting that when something happening, you got about a quarter of a second or half a second to make sure you respond in a positive way as opposed to the negative way. And then the example I like was Bruce Banner in the Hulk example, where, Bruce Banner decides if he's going to be the Hulk, if he gets in that right mindset. And if he spent more time on the positive dog, he'd have been able to control the Hulk a lot better. So some other pieces of that, to not let the enemies conquer and divide you, busyness and stress. And then we have to slow down and communicate to develop those relationships. And that's hard. When we're all stressed, we need to expand our friends and our relationships instead of shortchanging them. So, our jobs as leaders is to communicate and connect. And we're the ones that have to slow down and make sure everybody understands what's next. And make sure everybody understands that together we've got a chance to be a better team. So the next part, gave us some tools on, holding a meeting, but then asking everybody to rank the meeting. And the question that I thought was really good that stuck with me, I've talked to some people this week about it already, was asking your team members to rank how you're communicating with them. So you have a discussion, and then if at the end of that discussion you say, and I hope everybody read this part, you say, okay, if communication is the thing that drives us apart or opens up voids, and that we hear probably more than anything that we didn't know something or we didn't communicate. But if that's the issue, then how do we improve as a team? Well, you ask. When you get finished having a conversation about something, you say, okay, can you talk to me about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well I communicated with you? And when they score you a 6 or a 5 or a 2 or a 9, then ask them why isn't it a 10? I thought I was doing better than that. I was only a 7, and then where did we fall short? What can I do to make it a 10? And then, that's on teams and individually with people. So if we'd start asking those questions and then we work on getting better at that communication to get to a 10, and then if you get a 10, make sure you know why it was a 10 so you can repeat it. So I think that listening, and this is really a listening skill. So you're doing something and then asking for feedback will help us really communicate and connect. So I hope everybody is prepared to, do that. The other one that I thought was good and really fits us is team beats talent when talent isn't a team. And you guys see that. I know a lot of us are sports people, but we do believe a connected team will outperform a more talented team that is not connected every time. And I immediately think about how the Wolfpack's always a lot more connected than the Tar Heels. And they're a bunch of pretty boys in light blue, and we're a bunch of people that care about each other and communicate a lot better. And often we don't have as much talent as the Tar Heels, but often we beat them because anyway, I had to say it. But the story they told was about, the University of Florida. And I remember that team, they didn't have one in 2013-14, they didn't have one person drafted into the NBA, and they made it all the way to the Final Four. And it was really because of how they worked together. And so I thought that was a good example. And you can do that with your team. And one of the things that happens with that is everybody on the team has an easier time together because they trust each other. So the other thing that he brought up, if you remember in that chapter, is the University of Virginia's tennis team. This gave us specific examples through some exercises. But the first thing was that University of Virginia team, they had some problems, and he got everybody in a room, and he asked them who the most important people in their lives were, and they all said their family. But nobody in the room knew anything about each other's family on that team. And so he just knew immediately, the coach did, that they could never be as connected if they didn't connect on that kind of level. We don't have an alignment of what we're talking about being important. And once they did that, they had those kind of conversations and connected at that level. They won that championship 3 out of the 4 years. And he talked about, he became a different coach, but they became a different team. And it was really the love of each other is what made the difference. It wasn't their talent. It was team plus talent plus caring that made the difference. So building on that, I like this example because it gave us 5 or 6 specific exercises we can do. And we could, a lot of these you can do is on your teams in the field. We can do in the office, but it really is about practicing becoming a better team. I'm not going to go into them, all of them, but the weekly team building sessions, you guys could do these throughout the year. You could do them if you really knew me. The one I really liked was share a defining moment. You can, this says sit in a circle, or the book did, but really you can just talk about a defining moment, one that helped you become who you are today. All of us are on a journey. Every single person here in the company is on a journey. And so, telling a defining moment about how you got to where you are now will really connect you with your team. And then, we've done some things like, our bands that we do every year that he talked about the one word or phrase where, we've come up with learn, grow, and lead this year. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get better. So talking about those things, and then there's some other things. The 10 questions, where you have 10 questions that you talk about that can help you build a better team. And then I do agree. Individuals have grit, but teams need to have grit. And if you love your team, you won't give up on them. And that's what, to me, that's more important than anything. You hear all the stories about, people that go to war, uh, people that exceed farther than they ever thought they would. And it's really because a team, they get to the point where they're really not dependent on just themselves. They're not motivated by themselves. They're motivated by being on a team, and they don't want to let the other people down. And that's what happens. Individual grit can become really small, but team grit can become really big. And if you have a shared vision, a greater purpose, maybe even a collective optimism compared to the rest of the world. Is everybody frustrated with the negativity in the world that we hear about? If you flip on the TV, well, we don't have to do that. We can block that if we want to by holding each other more positive on a day-to-day basis and believing through our faith that things are going to get better. And so we get control of that. And then a belief in positive outcomes, and we get to control that. So if you're committed to each other, you'll fight for each other, and you'll move forward together through failure, adversity, and challenges. But leadership's got to do that, not just hope. Hope's not a strategy. So that was pretty much chapter 6. I think it's a really powerful chapter. I would encourage you to go back and read it again if you didn't read it, and if you haven't read it, read it, and think about how you can impact your team, because the whole company is made up of small teams. Your team you're involved with is the most important part of the company. Think about that for a second. If everybody addressed and looked at their team, your team, as the most important team in the company, and you make your team successful and you make your team the best team at GSM, then we're going to win, and you're going to win yourself. So moving on to chapter 7, positive teams commit and care. So back to the me versus we thing. When we comes before me, you become the person and team you're meant to be. So we's got to be before me. It takes a team, and you got to work on it behind the scenes. And what we've been talking about, being unselfish is how the team wins. And then really, like I said, we before me. And commitment makes everyone better. I just loved, all you young guys probably don't even know who Bill Walton is, but Bill Walton, in the mid 70s, mid 70s, was considered the best center in college basketball, and UCLA. And because he's got a special place in my heart, because that's who NC State beat in 74 to win the national championship, the greatest year in the history of basketball. Okay. And I didn't know this story, but Swin Nader was his backup. And it was a great story if you haven't read the book, where every day he was brought in to challenge Bill Walton, and he never got to play at UCLA much at all because Walton was so good. But after the year was over, he was drafted into the NBA and had this stellar career in the NBA, but he was the second best center on UCLA's team. So, he went in every day with the goal just to make Walton better. And the story and really the outcome of that is, by making Walton better, he was making himself better. A funny thing happened along the way. He became incredible. And that's what happens when you build a team. You're really focused on one thing, but you actually become a lot better along the way. And then you got to serve to be great. If you think about that story, his job every day was to make Bill Walton better, but by serving the team and Bill Walton, he improved himself. And when that happens, that's how, great teams don't have people who serve themselves. They serve other people. And once you do that, you grow yourself. And so that's a great thing to focus on. And then I think, one of the last things, or a couple things, is, do you really care? And I wanted to, Um, there was a good bit in this part of the book, but really for me, it's a simple thing. We have to decide. We all have to decide that we care more about each other than we do ourselves. And man, as a leader, um, I don't know. Sometimes we just don't want to hear that. We don't want to. Well, of course I care, or we say, yeah, of course I care, but do we care at a high enough level? Do we care to know what's important to our team members? Do we care to spend that little bit of extra time every day? Do we care to try to get better every day? And so, man, I read this book a couple times, this chapters a couple times, and I got a lot of things I know I can improve on my caring, and so I'm working on that. And I'd challenge all of you to work on that so we can get a little bit better. And these last two, really the last two slides, last two parts of this chapter really struck a chord with me about all of you and GSM Services. We're going to be 100 years old in a couple years in 2027, and when I think back about our history, I see the craftsmen and the craftswomen in our business. I see the guys that have come before us, and like if we go over to if next time you're over at the CCC, look at that wall there, and everybody on there is a craftsman at some level. They're not workers. They're not air conditioning guys or roofing guys. They're craftsmen. And, I think sometimes in today's world with our phones and our speed, we're in danger of losing that. And so I don't believe GSM is, but I believe the world thinks we are. And so I want you to think about your heart and your soul and your spirit and your passion, and invest in your energy to be that craftsman or that craftswoman every day. And I want to congratulate you, because I think we still have enough of that to go change our future. But you guys have to decide that every day, and that's the hard path. That's not the easy path. That's the hard path. But I think that's where we separate ourselves. And with that, comes the reality that nobody can fake it. You can't fake it on your team. We can't fake it with customers. You can't fake it with each other. And in our business, and in your families and in your day-to-day lives, you kind of, if you look at it, and you hear this all the time, but people know if you fake it. And so if you're going to fake it, then you got more to work on. But and your team won't follow you at all. But we say things like, she puts her heart in her work. They put her heart and soul into it. He has a big heart, and do it with all your heart. So the doing it and leading and caring is all about the heart. It's not about the mind. And so you got to decide, and we all have to decide. And that's why I like this. One of the reasons I love this book so much is it's about reality, and we all get to decide that. So we've wanted to do a quick review. That's the end of chapter 7, and positive teams communicate and connect. Connection is the difference between good and great. It starts with communication. And then where there is a void, the negativity will fill it if we don't fill it. And busyness and stress lead to a lack of communication, and that lack of communication leads to all kind of our problems. And we can rank our communication to understand better. I'd love to see us take on asking people how well we communicated 1 to 10. And then work on your team, because team beats talent when talent isn't a team. And if you love your team, you won't ever give up on them. And positive teams commit and care, and commitment makes everyone better, and you can't fake it. I've been wondering recently how many people are actually reading these books in the time frame that we're asking. And it's just like 40 pages or 25 pages. And and I don't really believe as many people are reading them as when I ask them. So I've had some people be honest this week, but catch up if you're not, and see what happens to you mentally when you come to this thing and you've actually read the chapters, and underline and highlight and make some notes. And readers are leaders, guys, and so hopefully you're doing that. So like every week, we're gonna give some homework. Please read chapter 6 and 7, and go back and look at those, and look for ways to implement some of the lessons from this week. If we don't implement some of this stuff, it's just yapping. And I know you guys you hear plenty of yapping from me and Stephen and other people, but implementing something that we can get better is the way to do it. And then read chapters 8 and 9, and that's only about 25 pages. So read that, and then in a couple of weeks, and actually we're going to have this session the week of. Actually, we are going to do it the week of the 15th next week. We're going to do these back to back, so we missed the Thanksgiving week. But and guys, guys and girls, thanks for the time and the efforts, and please just continue to learn, grow, and lead. We hope you have a rest of the good week, and we look forward to talking to you again. Thanks.